You're on the ride with the progress. The hills unexpressed. Oh, yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Deep Sea Podcast, Pressurised, a short, punchy version of our main feed that gets right to the scientific point. If you like what you hear and you'd like to hear the full episode, you can find it in the same feed. And now, to get right to the point. We are back to our Elasmo specials after a little Lake Baikal intermission, and it's the heavy hitters this time. It's the sharkies. So we are going to talk with Justin Cordova, who's the co-founder and deputy director of the Rogue Shark Lab. I got to know Justin at this year's Indo-Pacific Fish Conference. He's good company and someone who really loves his sharks. So we gave him a call to talk about everything deep sea sharks. I'm joined by Justin Cordova, who I met at the Indo-Pacific Fish Conference and who then came over to work with some of the sharks in the museum. And we got on well, and I was just seduced by his infectious positivity and love of what he does. So thanks so much for coming on, Justin.
Thank you so much for having me, Tom. I'm absolutely happy to be here.
Well, we like to keep in touch. It's good. It's a good excuse to chat.
Oh, obviously.
I didn't give you much of an intro because if I gave you your proper intro, it'd be about a paragraph of all the different things you do and all the different hats you wear. So as a primer to that, do you want to give us the backstory? Do you want to give us how you ended up specializing in deep sea sharks and the other hats you wear in order to be able to do that?
Oh, man. Okay, yes.
I'm going to get comfy because I know this is a long story.
Yeah, it is a bit of a story, so I'll just at least get the highlights on it. I guess I would start with a lot of questions I get is always kind of like, so why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself through all this? Like, what got you into sharks? And honestly, it's just been one of those weird infectious things that like happened to me before I probably could like develop memory. I was just, I guess, a child, and my parents would tell me this. You were in the Baltimore Aquarium and we took you to the shark section and you would just cry when we took you out. So they knew there was like this weird emotional tie to just wanting to look at sharks as a child, I guess at the age of 3 or something like that. It was something ridiculous like that. But, you know, I kind of just tell people like I just grew up and never grew out of it, or, you know, I just never grew up. And going through school, I just managed to talk to some science teachers that I was more or less close with. They had mentioned up the street in Moss Landing, there was a marine lab there, and there was a professor that was working on sharks, and that was Dr. David Ebert. And so I looked around, and by some kind of weird strike of luck, the university had a amazing program that was called UROC.
It was like a mentorship thing, wasn't it?
Exactly. And I just got very lucky, and I initially worked with invertebrates, and I remember hearing someone saying something along the lines like, those sharks are stinking up the area. And in my mind, obviously, I was just like, all right, sharks, I'm in. And it was all deep sea sharks. And it became like a new shark renaissance in my mind on defining what sharks are and how they look like. But it was a project that actually Gavin Naylor got the NSF grant to do, and it was part of a Shark Tree of Life project that he did. I was kind of waiting to see who would claim these sharks, and sure enough, my 2B mentor, Paul Clerkin, he came out and he started like getting these body bags kind of out. It's just like, I'm very interested in helping you out. And it started out like that, and I managed to work a bit more. I mentioned him, the UROC program that I was in, and then it was all set, and I had him become like my mentor for the program. And from there, I got exposed to all sorts of deep sea sharks. Essentially just get into the graduate program, and I decided to do my work on this really obscure group of deep sea sharks called demon cat sharks. And initially, I wanted to learn what skin patterns or textures can differentiate either groups or species within the genus Aprosteris.
Because we hadn't really resolved this group. It was sort of a fuzzy cloud of slightly different sharks. And it's one of the groups that people avoid because it's so difficult.
Exactly. It is a large task to take, and I loved it. And the thing that I loved about it the most is that no one really knows or cares that much about it. Everyone wants to work with great white sharks and learn the different times that they feed, or, it's just like they want to know any and all minuscule detail about it. And I just described a new species of demon cat shark from the Indian Ocean like in 2021. So we're still figuring out new species. The life history is
We're still on the discovery phase.
exactly.
We haven't started experimenting. We're still like, whoa, this is new.
Exactly. I graduated and then I managed to find a job as a fisheries observer, and it's kind of like being a fish auditor. I take into account all the fish being caught in commercial fisheries. I'm so thankful for my job now, and every once in a while my job's just like, hey, they're fishing out here, like, you want to audit the fish that they catch. And it's so funny because I get so excited over the deep sea sharks where, they're caught as bycatch, so they want to toss them over immediately. And I'm just like giddy, and I'm just like, oh, that's that kind of shark. And they're like, yeah, okay, get it overboard.
Hasn't been seen since the 1950s.
Yeah, it's just so amazing. It's just like you'll see some things just like, I've only seen 4 of these in my life, and they're like, oh yeah, we see them all the time. Like, who cares? Like, get them over. With that being said, I was just like remembering when I got back and I started kind of getting my work underway and making sure I can like make a living and everything like that. I ended up rooming with an old lab mate of mine, Vicky Vasquez, and she had word that there was a museum collection essentially that was being downsized and that there were deep sea sharks in there. So Vicky said, no, we need to keep them. So we kind of just stored them in our garage, basically. And fast forward, she managed to establish a nonprofit. So we were able to kind of like either put the expenses under the nonprofit to kind of like at least have them in like, ethanol, something to just like keep them from drying out. And then it kind of like evolved into having more of an educational and research combination where we're trying to teach people about sharks. We want to try to do our own research as well. And it's been quite the adventure, to say the least.
On top of your day job. And
oh yeah.
So just to get it out there for the listeners, this is the Rogue Shark Lab. And in the show notes, you'll find a link to their webpage. They've also got a good social media presence and some nice videos.
Please. And, we've done educational programs, so it can be down to just teaching kids about sharks.
Yeah, it's primary research, but it's equally education and public outreach and SciComm, which is a great combo.
Yes.
So should we dive in on some sharks?
Please.
Let's talk about the critters. So yeah, we put it to our Discord and our listeners about what they thought was lacking on deep sea sharks, which is pretty much everything. So how are the shallow and deep sharks different?
So that's a pretty interesting one. And I always kind of struggle with this one too, because how would you always define a deep sea shark? And sometimes it's kind of like, is it because they inhabit below the 200-meter range? Because, you have like angel sharks that can go down there.
And great whites down to 1,000.
Exactly.
Plenty of them visit.
Even here in San Francisco Bay, we'll have like 7-gilled sharks come up into the shallow waters.
Wow.
But I think maybe there are some general things you can look at, and then you'll be like, I'll put my money on it that it's a deep sea shark. And so you'll have the eye color, for example. These are maybe broaden examples, but I would say like if I were to see kind of like the iridescent kind of like green, bluish, emerald kind of color.
And it fades very quickly after death. So it's quite a lucky few who've seen that weird glow.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, there's an eerie green, almost radioactive glow from a lot of the deep sea sharks. And that's to do with their vision, isn't it? It's the same as cat's eyes. It's a reflective membrane at the back of the retina, isn't it? So even if a photon manages to get through the retina and not hit any of the light receptors, it gets a second chance as that's bounced back.
Exactly.
And it can sort of passes through the other way. So it's the same as in cats. It's really good at working in low light. But it does mean that as that light bounces back and you see it, there's this, it's like holographic almost, because there's this false sense of it's too deep. It's like there's a light coming from inside the shark, not from the back of its eyes.
It shines.
Yeah, really creepy.
I always think of it as just like, you know, when you like put a light through like a gemstone or something and you just look at it, but it's so eerie because it's so smooth.
Mm.
I think one of the more interesting ones was just recently I saw my first fresh lantern shark being caught off of Japan. And I just remember seeing like this hue of like purple on the skin. And I've seen so many lantern sharks where, you know, they just turn black,
Yeah.
you know, but to see it like fresh, I was just like, wow, that is purple. That is a purple color coming out of the, like, I've never seen that. But going on, any shark that kind of glows in the dark, have some bioluminescence.
And they're currently holding the record for the largest bioluminescent vertebrate, aren't they? It's one of the lantern
Oh
sharks.
yeah. One of my favorite ones too that go in the dark are the cookie cutter sharks. It's interesting because I know at least in one of the species they have ventral side having the bioluminescence, and you know that's supposed to be the whole counter shading where it's just like predators won't be able to see them from the bottom looking up and everything, but they have like a weird, I guess, interruption on it.
Like a dog collar.
Yeah, exactly. And some scientists suspect that, you know, that's supposed to be like tricking a predatory fish, that it's a very tiny fish. I think I've only seen one of them in my life, and it's just so unique seeing how big these things are. And I've been to fish markets around the world, and I've seen like these tuna or dolphin fish, and they'll have like these little chunks like missing out of them.
And you see it on gear as well. They sometimes go for the gliders and things like that, and not just have this. It's once you can see it, you can't unsee it. It's this perfect little excavation, and that horrible lower tooth rack that does this. It's all like one fused tooth. So when it sheds it like a pair of dentures. It sheds the whole thing.
Exactly.
They're really weird teeth. I got to dissect one recently. It was the closely related, the seal shark, which is like the bigger one. And we'd used it for education. It was going to be disposed of, but I just thought out of interest, we'll look for parasites in the gut contents. We had some people interested in parasites visiting, so it was a good chance to have a look. And there was a fairly recent plug of tissue inside it. It had obviously just fed before it was caught, or maybe even fed in the net.
How amazing.
Yeah. And to see what it looks like from the shark end, because of course we see the perfect cookie cut, but this was a spiral. So we could roll it up like a fruit roll up and make the plug, but actually it was it was a strip of flesh. It was really interesting because the thought is that they kind of suck on with those lips and then do a barrel roll essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Just like a clean plug out. So this would suggest like it kind of spirals in and then pulls out.
Yeah. So the tissue wasn't a plug. I was quite surprised. I could roll it up and make it look like the plug, but it was more like one of those fruit roll-ups. You know, it was a strip. So that was cool. I bet other people have noticed that, but I wasn't aware of that until I went exploring in the shark.
That's so cool. And you see the more unique ways sharks have been able to adapt to like new and extreme kind of environments. So when you see sharks with more than 5 gills, more than likely that's a deep sea shark. And, you know, it helps them collect oxygen in possibly these low oxygenated areas. And even something like a sleeper shark. I'm saying sleeper sharks as like somnidays, like, you know, Greenland sharks, Pacifics, like I think there's only like a few that don't stay in these really cold climate regions in the very deep ocean.
And they've got this lethargic sort of low power lifestyle. Certainly the big Greenlands, they're cruisers.
Oh, yeah, definitely. One of the slowest sharks out there. Some people have like suspected that they might have bursts of speeds because, you know, they'll find things like squid or seals and they think like maybe they are expert ambush predators.
Yeah. Are they scavenging or are they actually taking these animals out? And are they sneaky enough to do that? They seem to be at least one of the only known predators other than sperm whales of colossal squid as well.
Oh, yeah. We have the Pacific sleeper shark, and I just remember seeing one that was, I think, about 4 or 5 meters, and it shocked me.
Touching on some of the deep sea groups, the deep sea is a bit of a nature reserve for old prototypes and older lineages. So basically, you mentioned any shark with more than 5 gills, so the 6 and the 7 gill sharks, those are some old prototypes, and we've got the frilled sharks down there as well. And these are groups that don't really exist in the shallows. They used to be really prominent in the fossil record. They're all there, but they've kind of got it out-competed by more modern forms and pushed down into the deep. Can we do frilled sharks? Because I've recently become obsessed with them. And I know that we've got a listener actually who's active on the Discord who is all about frilled sharks. So can we give a little homage to these weirdos?
Oh, yeah. I always like seeing them. And like, it's always so funny because it's just like they have such a weird, primitive kind of form to them.
They look like a lizard. They don't look like a shark.
Yeah, like this big, weird lizard eel thing that is very long, has like one dorsal fin. It always kind of gets me because, like, unfortunately, with a lot of these deep sea animals that kind of come up to like the surface, especially during daytime, it's just like you kind of see them. They look like they're kind of on their last legs, you know, kind of like weirdly hunked over, kind of just like, oh man, that thing might not last very long. But when you see them or anything deep sea, they're just amazing. They have the same thing, these big green emerald kind of eyes. The reason why they have the name frilled is because of, you know, the as a gill filaments that they kind of like come out as a frill, and they just have this really unique kind of visual to them. And what sticks out to me a lot is, you know, their teeth.
Yeah,
you don't see that kind of tricuspid look on many sharks at all.
So they're in these weird, usually teeth are arranged in rows, and you'll know that sharks replace their teeth on this conveyor belt. But these guys have, I don't know, it's like pads, isn't it? It's like stripes of teeth.
Yeah, no, I was about to say like this like weird platform or pad that just looks like it goes from one end to the other end.
And they're into squid, aren't they? Is that the thought? Is sort of quite good at getting hold of a wriggling squid?
Right. Squid, I've seen also these like soft-bodied animals like that.
And this lizard body plan, so that they have like a neck. They feel like they can turn their head more than maybe a regular shark. And then it's almost lobe fin like fins. The fins look like legs, and this long serpentine body. They are one of nature's prototypes. They're amazing.
Yeah, I've only seen one in a museum collection, and this specimen was from South Africa. And like, I would almost just for fun just pull it out, just to look at it. I mean, these things are pretty big, very long bodied animals. So that's where kind of like the lizard kind of body plan kind of come in.
I always hold on to them, even if we don't have enough data to make it sort of part of the collection, because we're okay with them in the collection. We've got quite a few, but I will always hold on to one if it comes around, because it's just amazing fodder for public speaking. Like, the kids love these things. It's a proper sea monster.
That reminds me when I was talking with Dr. Sato, and he was like, "Can I tell you a secret?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And he was like, "I still like deep sea sharks." And I'm like, "Why is that a
secret?" I'm not bored.
Yeah,
I like that.
You don't have to hide from that, man. I like them, and I continue to like them because I always tend to find something new. You know, like great white shark, sure. Lemon shark, sure. You know, it's just like I'm pretty sure there's lots of information on it, and we could go into all the nuances of like how these animals operate and everything. But what kind of gets me is like these unsung heroes, where it's like deep sea sharks. You know, we talk about like rough sharks. They kind of look like footballs with like two big sails, like very, very rough to touch. And I got so into dermal denticles, you know, and deep sea sharks have an array of different ones. So you see something like a bramble shark that has like these rose thorn kind of dermal denticles, and like, you know, I've seen a video of someone just like rubbing their hand on it like barehanded, and then just you see the lacerations on the guy's hand, and I'm just like, I don't know why you just did that.
And yet the other way it's fine, because they're hooked. So you're right, they're like rose thorns, and they're hooked backwards, and you can run your hand over it and it's smooth, and then you go the other way and it's not good.
Yeah.
But you're right that there's magic to these structures, because there's so much detail in them. And just to break the word down, you know, a lot of people talk about the feeling of sharks, but like dermal denticles literally means skin teeth.
Exactly. With deep sea sharks, like one thing that I don't see too much is when you look at something like a mako shark or like a thresher shark, their dermal denticles tend to be very less overlap, more tight. They almost look like scale plates, you know, like on a fish. And I don't think I've seen a pattern like that on any deep sea shark that I'm thinking on the top of my head, at least.
And they're probably moving at much faster speeds, so you get that laminar flow, whereas a lot of the deep sea ones are quite slow moving.
Exactly. Yeah. And even the bodies feel a bit different. You talk about like coastal and deep sea sharks. I don't know if you have, but I've had to throw these sharks overboard, and I can definitely tell the difference in like muscle structures.
Yeah, they're a bag. They're a bag full of fluid.
Exactly.
I can feel the spine, but
it's like a bag of organs.
They are just loose, and I don't know if that's the oil getting sort of less viscous at atmospheric pressure, or if they're just like that down there. But they are just loose.
Totally, and that's that's like almost the same thing for teleos. A lot of them are
Yeah.
kind of like really soft. I think that's more with like pressure, but also maybe not need to swim very fast.
Yeah, it's multifaceted. It's like an energy saving thing. You're supported by the water. You're not having that burst of speed, so you don't need a rigid body that these muscles can push off. But yeah, I think that's a nice little thing to put when you're pushing back on the sort of idea of the deep sea, and that the idea these animals are all sort of spiky and horrible looking. Is that actually lots of stuff is soft. The deep sea is very, very huggable. Can we bounce around a few of the other sort of famous deeper sharks? I think we've got to do the goblin shark, because I usually push back with like, oh no, the deep sea creatures aren't that horrible, but this one creeps me out. This one isn't good.
No, goblin sharks are amazing. They're like in the same group as like great whites, makos, and thresher sharks, Slamnidae. I am fascinated about them, and because of the podcast, I just kind of recently like dove into it, and I was like, oh man, these things are cool. Other than like let's start with how they look. Okay.
Yeah, the obvious sort of origin of the name. They've got one little party trick that stands out once you see it.
Exactly. They have like the fastest jaws out here on this side of the Mississippi. They can protrude their jaw so fast, and they project their mouth, make an opening in their mouth cavity, and it can make like a vacuum. So it kind of also sucks in small fish.
Yeah, the jaw comes out to you, but also the water is pulled into that jaw.
And you just go into the mouth, and that's pretty much how it works. I believe is that their nose actually helps them like detect fish as well. So it kind of works almost in tandem, kind of like a metal detector. As soon as it like starts sensing something there, it's like, okay, like mouth time.
Yeah, the trigger is sort of this point along the snout, like it's a measuring stick. It's like, and you're in range, and then extrudable jaws.
Exactly. And the name comes from, I believe it's a Japanese word, is tengu same, which same is shark and tengu, I believe, is goblin.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Because we've got the sort of European idea of a goblin as a creature, but obviously that's totally separate.
Right. I think one of my favorite deep sea sharks that I feel never really gets talked about anywhere, but I feel like if you want to talk about like quintessential kind of like deep sea shark, have you ever heard of a viper dogfish?
Oh, I was going to bring that up. Didn't a really cool video go around recently talking about like somebody's holding a fresh one in their hands and like working the jars?
Are you kidding me? I'll go watch it right after this. Are you kidding?
Yeah, there's a cool recent video. I'll see if I can track it down. I'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, somebody's just holding one. I think it's one of these in their hands. They look a bit like a lantern shark, a sort of bulbous rounded head, not much of a rostral profile.
When I first saw it, I thought about one of my favorite science fiction movie, Alien.
Yes, because it's got the black as well. They look almost iridescent. They look almost metallic, the teeth.
Yeah, the profile of the head is like the right shape, that protruding jaw thing, and like I was just like, oh man, I really like this one.
There's one character amongst the deep sea ones that, I don't know, I guess it just is mysterious. I feel like I don't know much about it. And it sort of pops up decades apart in our lives, and that's the megamouth. And we don't know a great deal. That weird, huge mouth, the tiny eyes, these like little filamenty teeth. Yeah, and they just turn up every 10 years or so. There's hardly any specimens of them. I
feel like it's been recently that more of them have been showing up, and it was almost like the coelacanth.
Yeah.
Like, oh, these are like living fossils. You'll never find many of them. And because of these like recent interactions, I think at first, like it was always a big event. It was always like the news thing. I mean, even now you'll get the occasional news story. I think there was recently one here in San Diego where it was like broad daylight.
Oh, wow.
So they don't really feed on really big animals at all. And a lot of people think that they just travel a lot on the water column, like during the nighttime. I think that might be happening is like, we're just not seeing them.
Yeah.
Because they predominantly prefer just probably really deep waters where we don't fish as much.
Well, one of the things we do know about them, and this is a trait in some of the larger ones, is they're incredibly long-lived. And they top a couple of 100 years, is it? And then it's the record holder is currently the Greenland, I think, is the oldest vertebrate.
Yes. And I've always had this viewpoint because I guess, when you're in the field and everything, you kind of hear all, I guess, opinions on different studies and stuff. And a lot of issues was like, how long does a deep sea shark live? Because historically speaking, we take the vertebrae and then like the rings of a tree count, how many rings are in the cross section of it.
But that assumes seasonality, which the deep sea might be disconnected with. One of those growth rings might just be a good whaleful, a good chance to put on some meat.
Exactly.
We have touched upon this in the past, but we can go on it again. How often do you get asked about Megalodon?
Oh, not often anymore, but I do remember that fateful day when I saw that documentary. I remember thinking to myself, like, what are they doing?
Oh.
One of the funnier things was I did work on a boat, and around the same time that that documentary came out, there was like an Animal Planet one where they found mermaids, and I guess there was a whistleblower with the federal government that worked with NOAA saying like, oh, they're keeping it a secret or anything. So like the first question I had when I went on the boats with NOAA, I'm just like, all right,
where are the mermaids at?
Be clear, like, are there mermaids? And then he just sunk his head a bit and it's just like, we had to like actually make a web page describing that it is not real.
It was so irresponsible. The episode we talk about this is the monsters one, where we've got Tyler Greenfield on for that one as a cryptozoologist. But that you can be a responsible, factual channel, and then just for the sake of ratings and to pretend you don't know what you're doing, to pretend like, oh, it was just a what if thing. Then why did you hide the part where you say it's hypothetical? Why did you pretend to be scientists from respected institutions and like, okay, you got your ratings, you had your fun, but for decades after, we are sort of pushing back against this misinformation. You put noise into the system.
Right, exactly. And I do get that question asked maybe once or twice a year, possibly. And I do try to be as sympathetic or as kind as I can, because I always think about it as just what proof do you think there is? Have you seen like anything with missing chunks to them? Like, have there been many reports of that?
It's about what we want to be true. That's the thing that's always revealed when you ask the follow-up questions.
Yeah, right.
Even when it was around, it was a shallow shark. It was never hiding deep.
Right.
Yeah, and it's just that thing that like, if we discovered a bigger shark, then you'd be wondering if that one was out there. So actually, it's about you wanting to tell a spooky story about there being a big shark that we don't know about. And it's not that there's a smoking gun or that there's any evidence that this thing is hanging around. You just like it to be true.
Right. I feel like it's a very hard thing to hide.
Don't even entertain it, because the whole premise of the question is, wouldn't it be cool if? And that's not how you go about digging data.
Yeah, exactly. Like, of course it would be cool, but until then, like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, sure, if you ever find one, let me know. Like, we'll be famous scientists together. Like, I'll be the first one to say I knew they were real.
Yeah. Total flip.
But I mean, I think at first that question used to always bug me. But then now I'm more coming out of curiosity.
I'm happy if anyone shows an interest, as long as they'll listen to the response rather than get frustrated that it's not a yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with us. I know we only touched the surface of what there is down there and all these cool deep sea groups. So there will be wider reading. We will provide links to the Rogue Shark Lab and their outputs, but also some nice papers, open access if we can, if you would like to learn more about any of these groups, because we have just done a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the big deep sea classic shark groups, but this is the tip of a very big iceberg with some great weirdos out there. So we'll give you some jumping off points to learn more about these amazing critters. And thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with us.
Oh, thank you, Tom. I had quite a blast.
And that was a pressurized version of one of our longer episodes. If you enjoyed that and you would like to hear the full length episode, just match the episode numbers and you'll be able to find the full length version in the feed. Thanks for listening. We'll deep see you next time, and I abyss you already.
On the ride with the progress, the hills unexplained.